Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for another Journaling on a Budget video. Today we're going to do some stenciling and some stamping, and we are going to put in the corners, the bleached corners that we made a while back. I had a lot of people say that they really liked the corners, so I wanted to make sure that I got those in our book. So I have those here, and I've chosen the pages I want to put it on, and I've decided that even though this page has lines on it, doesn't mean that I can't put something on it. So I'm going to put one on each side of this page, but we definitely need to do something with that before we go ahead and put them in there. And then, you know, this page looks nice because it has the lines for writing, but we have to do something with this page over here before we put our corner in there. So the first thing that we're going to do is I just wanted to kind of do some stenciling and get some backgrounds on there. And so what I have done is I have just taken a piece of paper. Now I did use cardstock to cut myself a couple of stencils, but cardstock is really hard to cut. And so really the easiest way to do it, and these are not going to be reusable and reusable, although if you love them, you can transfer them onto your own plastic stencil. And I do have videos in my Build Your Stash series, how to make your own stencils with X-Acto knives or with stencil cutters, whichever you have. But I just folded this regular 8.5 by 11 page. I just folded it to meet up the side and then cut along there so that now I have a square that's 8.5 by 8.5. And so then I'm just going to fold it just like you would make a Christmas snowflake. And that's what we're going to do, and then we'll use that as a stencil. So we'll fold it, we fold it in half, then I fold it in half, and I'm going to fold it in half one more time. And remember that where you have folds, your pattern will be bigger than what you've cut. And on the edges where it is just straight, like these edges here, if we cut anything on this edge, whatever we cut, that is going to be the design along the outside of our stencil. And it will look just exactly how you cut it. These others, as you cut them, they will change a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can cut a little bit of like no, it's not going to be a star, it's just going to be a point. I'll turn that over and meet them up a little bit better, then just pull them off. And then the one thing that I like better about the about just using copy paper is it's just so much easier to cut through. When you're trying to cut through cardstock, it is so hard to cut through. So I'm just going to kind of make a wavy line here. And for me, it's easier to cut on this side, so I'm just going to turn it over so I can cut over here. I'm just going to meet this up right at the top, like that. And then maybe just a little triangle. Well, let's go straight up to that angle, and then do another one where we go straight up like this, and then cut on an angle up to that point. So we'll have like that. Now just remember, just turn your paper over however it's easiest for you to cut. Going to try and do a little bit of a swirl here. It's kind of hard to do, cutting the swirls, but and I guess this isn't even going to be a swirl, it's just going to be a little bit of a hook or whatever. But and you can get much more intricate in cutting on camera here. You know, I just want to get one that's kind of cut and done, versus, you know, having you sit here while I'm trying to figure it out. Now the bigger you get here, when you're going to open that up, see, as we open this up, See, that makes that twice as big. So you have to remember that. So you don't want great big huge things unless you want a big like hole in the center or something. Just going to cut that one down there. And so you're going to get the most visual effect from cutting along the two folded lines. This one and this one. This line that has no folds on it is not going to give you as much effect because it's just if you cut a little half circle, you're going to get a half circle. And I want to leave my last bit of fold here to keep that part of my yeah. And I think since this is my flat side, I'm just going to do this all the way along the edge. Kind of put those back together a little bit. Maybe round off that corner. And then we'll come in from this side. And just remember, if I accidentally cut through all the way up to this one, that's going to leave a great big hole in my middle. So I am going to have to be careful not to do that. You cut a really pointy triangle and it will give you a diamond. If you make it kind of like tall and skinny when you open it up, it will look like a diamond. And you'll just find that as you go through, you'll have patterns that it's like, oh, I really like that pattern. If you want to know how you got it and you can't quite remember how you got it, fold it back up again and then look at it. And you can always even trace it onto another one if you decide that you know, like there's a part of it that you really love, but the rest of it you don't care for. Take the part that you love, trace it onto the next one that you fold up, and then you'll have that same shape when you cut it out again on your next one. So just being careful that I don't touch the others, but I don't want a huge amount of paper left in the middle because you know, I want to use this as a stencil, so like I said, I'm just kind of hurrying, so these may or may not really look that great. But yes, I like to do as much of my own type things as I can. You can get very cheap stencils at the Dollar Tree for $1, and they're nice stencils and they work very well. But sometimes I just like to have, whenever I do something I like, as much of my own work in there as I can possibly have, for a few reasons. Number one, then I don't have to remember where did that come from. If you were to ever submit something to a magazine and you've used a stencil, they want to make sure that it's allowable for you to use that stencil and for them to publish it. But also, you just have to have a list of even if it is allowable, you still have to name what you've used. So if you've used mostly all your own stuff, then you don't have to worry about trying to remember that. So there we go. Now if you want to get real fancy, you could use an X-Acto knife and cut something right there and get a little circle or something right in the middle. There's all sorts of things that you can do. Let's get those off of here. Make a mess on my table. And then we'll unfold it and see what it looks like. Hopefully it looks okay. Ooh, I like the way it looks like that. So like, let's say I open up the whole thing and I don't like the way it looks. I know that I like this and I can actually just use that part of it. I'm going to grab my stamp book here so you can see it better. So that's what it looks like. And I like that. And I like these little bits in the center. You don't have to use the whole thing, even when you're stenciling. So, you know, to have parts that you like better than others, you may find that you use one part more than you use the other. So there we go. Now we've got a stencil that we can use to stencil on our pages with. And so I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab out that orange page. And so here's one that I did out of cardstock. And then usually, like with the cardstock, a lot of times I will iron this on a nice flat surface and iron it to get rid of all of those folds, because with the cardstock it wants to stay folded up. And then what I did was, this is the piece that I cut off my paper. And so I just went ahead and I folded it in thirds. So I folded it like this, and then folded it like this, and then I just went in and I just cut it. Let's see if we can actually cut a swirl here. My hard part with the swirls is going back the other way. Keep your paper on the top of your folded paper. It's easier to do. And this is something that if you take your time, you can get some really nice ones. And I wouldn't try this with cardstock because it's hard enough with regular copy paper. There we go. Then when you open it up, that's what you've got. So you've got a half a swirl and you've got a whole swirl. So if we want to swirl somewhere, there we go. We've got one. Alrighty, so let's go to that orange page. And we can do one of two things. We can either take our board and put it underneath to do our stenciling, or what's on the other side of this page? We've got this on the other side. And both sides of this are flat, so I can just remove that, which is why I love my rubber bands. And this will be so much easier for me to deal with. Now, how did I do that? That's not the page I thought I was pulling out. Wait a minute. This is the page I'm supposed to be working on. Okay, that's the one that was in there and here, and then I have my lines over here. Okay, got that. So I am going to open it up so that I don't accidentally maybe go through onto what I have right here. I don't think that it will because my ink is not that inky. And then I just kind of have to decide, how do I want to do this? I know that I'm going to have my corner down here. And so maybe I'll just go ahead and do it just like that. And I'm going to do it in, what do I have here? Wild Honey. And maybe I'll add a little bit of brown to it also. Now, do I want to go over my edge so I have this little bit here? I think that I do. Yes, we're going to do that. So I'm going to go straight along the edge to start with. And then I know that I've got that done. Now, the one thing, whenever you're stenciling anything, and now we're using ink, and it's quite a dry ink, but you stencil by patting up and down. So don't rub, even though, like here, you may think that I'm doing this because this is paper and it's delicate. But that is not the reason. The reason that I'm doing it is that you don't want to get whatever you're stenciling with underneath your stencil. So when you go straight up and down, you have you'll get a much crisper image because you're only touching the paper instead of rubbing whatever you're doing underneath the paper, especially if you're using paint. And whenever you're using paint to stencil, now this is leaving lines where the edge of my sponge is, and I could be very careful to make sure that doesn't happen, but I'm not going to, because I actually think, and I don't know until I take it off, that's the one thing about a stencil, I think I'm going to like those lines. I think it's going to give it just a little bit extra dimension. And so I'm going to let that happen. Otherwise, I would want to stamp off just a little bit and make sure that I didn't push real hard on the edges. So I would take this stamp off like this, and then I would go lightly instead of pushing hard to get those hard edges. So, and I know I don't have to go all the way down into this corner, so I'm not going to bother going that far. And we've almost got it here. And you do just want to make sure that you hold your stencil down well so that it does not move. And when you go to move your hand, I usually, after I've already pounced off all of the ink or most of it, then I'll hold my stencil down with my sponge and then pick up my hand and move it to hold the stencil down in another spot. Because otherwise, when you pick your hand up, the stencil's going to go with it and you'll have to line it back up again. Which is not that big of a deal. If it happens, it happens. You just line it back up again. So there we go. I think that I have the whole thing. And there we go. I like it. I like that a lot. So this is what it looks like. And see, that just gives us, you know, I'm just not happy with the plain white background. You know, it's like, I don't know. So now the question is, do I want to leave it like that? Or what I could do is, oops, it was this way. I would want it to be the same way. I could move it just a little bit, not a whole lot. And then I could stencil it with another color, and it would kind of give a little bit of shadowing. I don't know if I want to do that because I really do like the way it looks. I think I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to do that. But what you can do if you want kind of like a shadow is just move it just a little bit. Now remember, your shadow is going to be whatever color you put down first. If I were to go over this with brown now, all of these big spots would get filled in with brown, and the only thing that would be orange would be the little bit behind it. So remember that. First color is your shadow. Second color when you're stenciling is going to be your predominant color sticking up. So I'm going to leave that like that. I'm going to I'll edge it with brown, but I really like the way that that turned out. And I'm going to put this on. Ooh, let's see. Okay. First things first. I don't like how dark that is. It's not very dark. So I am going to line up, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to hit that spot real quick. I need a little bit more ink. Whoops. See, don't get in too much of a hurry. Don't get underneath your stencil. We'll have to see if I actually did or not. There we go. And the best thing to do with stencils is to lift them up and see what you've got to see if you want to do any corrections like I just had to do. Okay, so I like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pocket and I'm going to glue it on. And then I'm going to put my stencil back on here, and I'm going to stencil this with the same pattern in brown. But to me, this is not heavy enough. So it needs to be backed with something. So even regular copy paper will be just fine, but I'm going to glue it on this piece of copy paper, and then I'm going to rip that off so that I will have a heavier pocket. As a matter of fact, I'm going to grab a piece of cardstock, and I'll be right back. Okay, I am back, and I went ahead and I glued this right to the cardstock with stick glue, and I figured there was no point in turning it back on to have you watch me do that. I just put stick glue on the back and stuck it in the corner. I lined it up so that I wouldn't have to do anything else to it. Now, the only thing is I'm not sure what I want it to look like. I'm going to cut out here. Oh, while I was at it, I did the other side too, so that it would be ready. I'm going to go like that, set this aside. I don't know if I want to rip right next to my bleached part, or if I want to just come out here and leave a little bit of this, because I backed it on craft cardstock color. I thought that I might want to leave a little bit of that out there. It gives us one more layer, and I do think I'm liking this. Okay, let's see what it looks like on the page. Yes, and especially since I'm going to do this in brown, I really like that there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edge the edge of that. And let's see, what brown do I have today? Vintage Photo. So I'm just going to edge this before I glue it down, and I'm going to glue it down before I try and stencil it. And I'm going to come down and do this side too. Oh, my vintage photo is getting very dry. Okay. Get the little bits of foam off of there. Okay. So, and we have to remember, this is not the page that's going next to it. So when you're looking at it, don't compare it with that page or do anything to make it match that page, because that's not where it's going to go in the book. And I'm just using Fabri-Tac glue just because it grabs quicker. I do use Eileen's Tacky Glue a lot. It's cheaper, it's much cheaper, and it's just as easy to use, but you just have to kind of wait for it to dry a little bit. So for video's sake, it's quicker to use the Fabri-Tac, and that's the only reason I really use it. I'm gonna line this up in my corner. There we go. So now I only came down this edge with the glue and this edge with the glue. So now we've got a pocket here. And I've got a little bit of my page sticking out here. That's okay. I'll just put some of our vintage photo on there when we get done. Oh, hopefully I've got enough vintage photo to do the stencil. Let's see, we had this on here. I do want to line it up because that will make it look better. It doesn't have to be lined up perfectly, but I want to make sure I'm using it the same way. Keep our fingers crossed that we've got enough ink here. All right, so I'm going to hold that down right there. And then go in with the brown. Now I can get out towards the edge, towards the bleach part. I just don't want to go onto the regular page with the brown. And I'm going to look at this and see what, yep, it's doing okay. Okay, and where I'm pushing really hard, it's getting darker spots. That's okay, because it's just kind of like one more layer. If I didn't like the way that it was looking, I would have went and got my walnut stain, because I don't use it as often, so I know it's not as dry as this. Or I could have spritzed this with a little bit of water and let it sit for a few minutes, which is what I'm going to do when I'm done here. And use up every last little bit that I have in here before I get a new one. They really do last quite a long time. Whoops, I lifted up my stencil, so hopefully I didn't get underneath of it. Let me see if I haven't got over here at all. And so this is just a really nice, easy way to fill in a page and still have room left if you want to add embellishments, or if you want to leave it for people to add photos. So, because that's the biggest thing, is that you don't really want to totally fill up your book completely if you're giving it or selling it, because they're going to want to be able to add their own pictures and their own writing and, you know, maybe a little bit of their own embellishments. So you want to leave them some room to do that. Or even if you're going to keep it for yourself, you want to leave yourself some room to do something later with it. If you want to maybe add a new embellishment that you found, or you know, or put some writing and some photos in there, you just want to make sure you have the room. So there we go. And I have to say that I really like that. So that is how that page has turned out, and I think that turned out great. And I'm going to really quickly, what to do with my brown? Just trying to get those out of my way since they keep falling out. I'm going to edge this with the brown. Thank you all for doing your voting. So it it was kind of funny because it pretty much came out about half and half, with edge the whole thing in brown, or just edge it in whatever color you feel like, or edge it in a color that matches. So that day that I asked, I was feeling very brown. I was thinking the whole thing should be brown. And the next time I worked in it, then I was feeling very colorful, and I wanted to put color on that page. So I'm glad it kind of came out 50-50 so I could make my own choice. And then sometimes you'll make a choice, and the next time, well, like I said, one day I was feeling brown, and the next time I was feeling colorful. So you never know what's going to happen. Okay, now I have one spot right here. Oh, there's supposed to be a diamond right there. And so I can tell that there's something missing. And it was very, very plain. That makes me happier. And I do want to finish this corner down here. And again, like I said, if you lift it up when you're done, just lift up a corner and kind of check the whole thing out. You don't have to try and line it up later. There we go. Okay, so there is that page. Now, it needs a really pretty tag in here to make the page really, look nice. But that page to me now is done. Now the question is going to be, where was that page? Oh, it was right here. I do know that because I remember that being on the other side. So that was the right spot. Put that back in there. And be careful about catching whatever you've got on there. On the other side, there we go. So this is what we have now. And I like that. With a really nice tag in here, it's going to look really great. Then we just have to look at this one over here and decide what it is. I'm going to do it this way. And it was a whole lot easier when I just cut it a little bigger than I wanted. And the thing is, you can use these parts that you ripped off in little snippets, and they look really good. And then you've already got some ripped into different shapes, and just pop them right on there. So that one's going to go right there. We'll edge that one a little bit, and then we have to decide what are we going to do with it. Are we going to make it match this one to a certain extent? Are we going to put something different on it? I don't want to ink above my book because then I'm just going to get the brown stuff all over the little foam bits. I definitely need to wet this down. Okay, so I just don't know which way to go. I kind of like my pages to match, or at least go with the other side, so I could stencil on it. It doesn't have to match, so long as they both have stencil. I'm going to stencil it in brown. What if I stencil this corner that looks different than this, and yet it's still part of the same one? I think I'm going to do that. And this time I'm going to stencil it before I put it in the book or on the page, because on that one over there, I wanted to line it up. On this one, I don't need to line it up, and I don't want to take the page out. So do I want to leave an edging? No, I don't really want to leave an edging. At least not very much. We'll do it like that. Kind of a happy medium. And now you can sit here and watch me really fight with my ink. So remember, when you're getting ready to craft, check your inks first. And make sure they're going to be wet enough to use. Most inks can be reconstituted for a while before they're actually out of color. A lot of times when you run out of color, you've really just run out of moisture, and there's still a lot of pigment in that pad. So if it is a permanent ink pad, then something like your alcohol ink, what do they call that? They have some kind of a alcohol ink liquid that you use to move your alcohol inks, and you know that has the right base to it to redo your alcohol, or to redo a permanent pad. Or otherwise, me personally, if I think that it's gone and I'm going to throw it away anyways, then I will try something. So if it's permanent ink, I put rubbing alcohol, 99 or 91%, the highest percent that I have in my art room. I put that on there because permanent inks are alcohol based, and so that will reliquify them. And like I said, if I'm going to throw it away anyways, then I don't mind trying it. If it doesn't work, oh well, then I'm going to throw it away. But if it does work, well, then I've just saved myself a little bit of time and money by being able to still use that longer. And there we go. We don't have anything down here in the corner. Was there nothing down there? There was not. And I don't like that there's nothing there, so I am going to find something to put there. I'm going to put this little, where'd it go? I had a little squiggly somewhere. Oh, maybe I'll do this. Put those two diamonds there. I don't want it to be touching the other piece that's stenciled already above it. And now I need to be careful not to hit this stencil up here because my pattern is already up there. So I need to make sure that I just stay right here and don't get anywhere else. There we go. Because you think, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's just a stencil and it's all on there messily. But it's not necessarily. It really does have a pattern to it. And if you wind up with just a little mark on that pattern, oh, there they are. I'm going to put these diamonds over here also. Tie it all together. Excuse the phone. Sorry about that. And again, I want to make sure I don't get up in there anywhere. It's okay if I come off down here. And there we go. Oh, I like the way that that looks. Yep, it needed that because those spots were just too plain. And so we are going to come down along the two sides after I get the glue off the top. Get this out of my way. Okay, just come down the side and the bottom and put it in our book. And then we'll just have to find some tags to put in it, or make some tags to put in it. I just started pulling out, I made a list of all of the weeks so far, because so many things that I've done, I've showed you how to do it and everything, but never put it in the book. And then I have other things that I just sit in the evenings, I just do things. So it's like, okay, did we do this already or not? So that we can put some of those things that we've already done in our book. I'm just going to line this up with my corner down here. And this also works really well. I've already covered it up, but just a second and all. This works well because on this side I had stamped Believe, and then I went over it with permanent marker. And when I did that, it didn't soak through completely, but it did soak through a little bit. So now that I put this on here, I just noticed when I put it on there, it covered up that little bit that soaked through. It wasn't very noticeable, but... And there we go, just get that all solid on there. And there we go. So there is our spread. And I like the way that that turned out with our own stencil. And now you can take this stencil and like put it in a file folder, put it someplace that can keep it safe. And you'll be able to reuse it and reuse it. Especially I like to take things like this and use it throughout a journal. So some of the patterns are the same. I don't always do that, but I do like to do that sometimes. I could even possibly put a little bit of light stenciling here on this page. I'm not going to on this one, but sometimes, you know, you can put a light stenciling on your line pages. It just gives you a really nice background. So, let me see. I have a, hold on just a second. I'm going to grab a stack of stuff that I have here. Dropped a stack of stuff. Okay, so these are just things that we have made. We may not have made every single one of them on screen, but they are the same subjects as what we have already done. I like that one, but what about this one? Really is cute. What about on this side? So this one is just journaling on the back. It's got the hidden treasure flower there on the front, and I think that looks really pretty and goes really nicely with this side. And so then we just have a few more. That one's a postcard that we just, when we made flower books, and we made the postcard stamps. And these are just flowers cut out of those are really quite pretty. Now, do I want to put, I might want to just put all of these. No, I really like this one here, so it has to stay. Okay, so I like that one there, and I do like those there. Might decide to put something different later, but they, you know, the tags don't have to be the same. So there we go. There's our layout for today. And so that's how you can make your own quick stencil. And, you know, like I said, put it in a file folder or something. If you don't have a file folder, just take 2 pieces of paper and tape them together at the bottom. Just tape them all the way, or if you don't have tape, glue it all the way across the bottom and let it dry. And then you can just open that up, put your stencil in there, which I can't get to right now because I just set all that stuff on top of it. And, you know, you'll have a safe place to keep your stencil. Oh, yes, I had these all in order too. So week 12 was the week that we did our postcard stamps, and these were some postcards that I made after we did the postcard stamps. But these ones I think would be really nice in here too. So we'll decide that later. Okay, thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. So I think that it's about time to finish up this book. And I think on the next book, I'm thinking of doing a themed book. So whether it be farm theme, flower, you know, flower theme, animal theme, child theme, whatever it may be. If there's something, a theme that you think you'd like, put a suggestion in the comments for me, because I need to figure out what the next one's going to be. I don't normally do theme journals. I normally do very eclectic journals and very mixed media, but I thought it'd be really kind of cool just to try and do one that's all basically, you know, one kind of a theme and things that go with that theme. So if you can think of a theme, please put it below. I would really appreciate hearing it. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.